Alesheia.
And I'm Jillian.
And you are technically speaking with DTL, and this is our second episode.
Yes.
Yay! So this week we are going to be talking about
women in engineering.
So that's the other side of tech. Those are the real smart people. Those people that make stuff happen. I'm not saying other people aren't smart. I'm just saying that I'm not that smart.
And they do make it all happen. So I would like to introduce our guests today. We have Gayronza Thorne and Maewanda Burks. So I'm going to pause for a minute and let them introduce themselves, tell us, what part of engineering they're in, where they went to school, and whatever they want to share about their bio.
Whoever wants to go first.
All right, I'll go first. Thank you, Jillian. My name is Gayronza Thorne, as you stated. I am located in Huntersville, North Carolina, which is just north of Charlotte. I'm married to a wonderful husband and have 2 college-age kids. I graduated from the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University with a degree in electrical engineering, and I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I am also currently a senior director of customer success with a software company called Salesforce, where I manage a $40 million portfolio made up of Fortune 500 companies.
Hi, I am Maewanda Burks. I also went to North Carolina A&T State University, majored in electrical engineering, and furthered my education at George Washington State University, getting a management and information systems. I'm also married and have 2 children. They're not in college. They're school age, 5 years old and 11 years old. And I also work for a small company called Kapora, where we work with an application called Splunk and work with big data and data analytics.
Wow, so big data is actually...
And we're sisters.
Yes.
And we're sisters.
Oh, wow, that's cute. That's nice. That's sweet. Big data is actually something that we are actually looking at here. It's something that's gaining a lot of traction. So we might be reaching out to you, just talking about big data. But one thing that is noticeable, of course we work for Shaw, but Shaw started A&T started in the basement of Shaw University. However, you realize that
We both went to A&T as well.
we both went to A&T, but A&T, I believe, is the second largest producer of African American engineers in the nation, behind Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. So that is good stuff. So that's good to see, especially women are coming out of that program.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's kind of our big highlight. We want to focus on women, especially African American women, because this is our series for Women's History Month, who work in more so male-dominated fields. So we just wanted to take this time and have a conversation with you about, what's that like?
You want to go first, Kay, or?
Sure, I'll go. So oftentimes, being the only African-American woman in my world, sometimes it feels a little surreal, but it also can be a little intimidating if you let it. I think it's surreal because when I think about where I grew up in rural North Carolina, May and I grew up in the country, on a dirt road in a house surrounded by a cornfield. And now look at us, I'm having meetings with executives of Fortune 500 companies. And I think back on our mom who dropped out of college, after she got pregnant with me, and then all of the sacrifices that she made for us to make sure we had the opportunity to do things that she didn't. And I'm sitting there and all of those thoughts go through my head when I'm sitting in those conference rooms and in those meetings, thinking, who knew that this little Black country girl from a place called Farmers Union, North Carolina, whose first job was working in a tobacco field, driving a tractor, could be holding meetings in corporate boardrooms. That's just very, very surreal. And then when I talk about it being intimidating, early in my career, I noticed that when I would, after college, my first job, there were conversations that my other coworkers were having that I didn't understand. And, things, they were talking about things like investments and stock market, career planning, politics, world affairs. had no idea what that stuff was. We didn't talk about that growing up. Those weren't topics in our household. And so it was like being left out. So it's like, finding yourself in a new friend group and everybody's talking about the same thing except for you. And you're like, why don't I have something in common? How do I get to have something like that in common? So it wasn't that I wasn't taught what to say. I didn't even know how to think, beyond my current situation. So for me, that was the impetus for me to go back and continue my education to learn more about business and about money, because those were things the other people were talking about and I didn't know anything about. And so for me, that meant I took an investing class at Durham Tech after I graduated from A&T, just so I could learn what to do with the money that I was making. Because as an engineer coming out of college, I was making good money, but I didn't want to blow it. And no one told me what to do with it. So then after that, I also took an accounting class and econ class at Central. Again, just furthering my education. And ultimately, I ended up going back to Chapel Hill and I got an executive MBA. Those were all personal investments I made in myself that helped level the playing field when I was the only one in the room. And so for me, that helped me get over the situation of where it was intimidating because I felt like I could speak their language.
So, May, would you like to talk about what it's like sometimes being all the time, I'm not sure, being the only African-American woman in your field or in the meeting?
I think my intimidation started like even before working out in the career environment. When I was interning, you would think that the playing field is leveled. And as Gay mentioned, that a lot of our white male counterparts are more prepared than ourselves and even our white female counterparts. But even once I started working, I've had a couple of experiences with government leads and people even at the same level where I really felt intimidated, so that to the point where I had to go back and kind of, learn a little bit more about what was going on at work and try to, re-educate myself just so that I could, start out on the same playing field. So it's been very interesting, but I've noticed that once I prepare myself enough to be introduced into the work environment and to be on that same level, I feel a bit more confident in being able to work as their counterparts.
So I think one thing that you both have spoken on is the ability to go back and you hear these conversations that are happening, you're not making it like, woe is me, I don't understand what they're saying, I just don't fit, When I did my dissertation, it talked about Black women not having that kind of social group when they're at work or whatever. I think a lot of times it's because I don't say we intentionally place ourselves on the outside, but we do grow up in different areas than other people. So I like that, you and your sister actually went out and actually researched, got some more information. They don't call Black women the most educated group in America for no reason. Like, we're gonna do the research, we're gonna learn. And I think that's one thing that employers are missing, is that Black women are natural researchers. You're not gonna say something and think I'm supposed to just take it, right? No. Let me research because it don't sound right.
I think it's very important that if you don't know something, say you don't know it, don't try to BS it, and go figure it out. Like, don't, always come to the table and have excuses. Figure it out and then prove yourself.
Right. Yeah. That is the truth. I wanted to ask you guys, I didn't get to ask it on our last interview, but last episode, but how has the office environment changed since last, let's just say since last year this time, to now that we have a new president? Has the office environment changed? Have people been more, I don't know, friendly, or, have they changed?
I don't know if Gay can speak on it because she's normally working remotely, but I was going in, and I do work in the government space. You do hear, in the past year, you do hear a lot about politics and people being very vocal on who they support. And I think during the previous presidency, people were getting real comfortable, in how they want to treat you. But also, I've also worked with people who don't look like me, but are very supportive of me. And I think that's very important, that a lot of our white counterparts understand that you have to make us feel welcome. And I think that really changes how we work in those type of environments. Like I work harder, you produce more when you feel more welcomed and more comfortable.
Absolutely. What's it?
So has the climate changed? I know through politics, but how about through COVID? Like, has the climate changed since then?
Especially
what's it like now?
Asian-dominated industry too, right? So, people were saying that people who are Asian may be getting like a tax or something like that, but how does that, ooh.
I did have one Asian coworker, and this was like back in March when stuff started to kind of shut down. She did say that she had experienced some situations, not at work, but where people were kind of, making comments, making her feel very uncomfortable, as if it was her fault, as if all of this was her fault. And I haven't experienced anything like that at work.
What about just in general with COVID? Have things changed? I know in our last episode, they spoke a lot about, those conversations that were held around the water fountain, or, those conversations you weren't always included in are no longer happening because we're not in a space where you can gather. We're all via Zoom, so now they're feeling more welcome in those spaces. Do you think that's a thing?
I don't know if I could speak on that because I didn't experience a lot of situations like that in my current work environment. Maybe on my last job, if this all had occurred like during my last projects, I think it would be more relevant. But I don't know if that really applies in my current situation right now. I think things would be different if I was on my last project during COVID.
I do have a question as far as, on our last call, the young lady said that now being in the corporate space remotely, right? There's a lot of times where she has to, she does have the over talking. People don't want to hear what she has to say, or she feels like, she kind of has to say, like the first lady said, "Excuse me, I'm speaking." Have you had that experience in the engineering space where you kind of, people are kind of over talking you or downplaying your ideas, or, kind of question what you say because they just don't feel like, you have as much to offer? Oh, she don't know what she's talking about. She's just here to be the token. Do you feel like that you've had that experience now or in the past?
Yeah, I've experienced it in the past where, sometimes you find, typically it's a white male coworker who, thinks he's all that and is going to, just showboat and just try to take over and command the room. And I remember years ago, I had the coworker, every time I was assigned a project or a task, he would insert himself and, try to do this and try to get credit for it. And I finally, went in his office, closed the door, and we had to come to Jesus. Like, dude, I'm like, this is your job. This is my job. They're not the same. They don't overlap. And once we had that conversation and I checked him, and today, years later, we are really good friends, but he had to be put in his place. It's okay if you do it the right way. You can't come off as being the angry Black woman, but you come off saying, hey, respectfully, let's review what your role is and what mine is and how we can work together, because what we're doing right now isn't working. You're in my lane, stay in yours.
Like I said, I did my dissertation kind of talking about Black women in the workplace and the effects of perceived prejudice and discrimination. And what I did talk about was diversity pushes. Do you feel like they're beneficial? Do you feel like they kind of cause more of an issue? Or do you feel like they're just something that is done to kind of be like quality control, if you will? Like, see, we had a conversation about race. You shouldn't have any problems. You know what I mean?
Just a little bit. Speak up just a little bit.
She said, you know, she was like, you know, that big push for diversity, and you know, those cultural conversations. Do you feel that they're beneficial, more so than harmful, or is it just something on a checklist that people are doing now because of the climate that we are in?
Or even before that.
Or even before this climate.
You want to go first, or I?
Yeah, I can go first. I don't know, personally, I feel like it's a checklist. I feel like people at work are going to treat you the way they're going to treat you, regardless of whether they go through any type of diversity training. I think it may make some people more aware, but I think for the most part, people are who they are. And if some people just don't understand other people's cultures, and they're just maybe not willing to, they don't want to understand other people's cultures. That's just my personal opinion. I feel like companies do it. It's a checklist. I don't know. I think maybe Gay could speak more on it. Her company seems to be a bit more open to diversity than a lot of companies that I have seen.
Yeah. Yeah, my company is extremely progressive. We're headquartered in San Francisco, you know, the gay capital of the world. You know, we are open. We welcome everybody. We have what we call employee resource groups, ERG. We've got them for every flavor of person that's out there. And it's an intentional exercise that we do. You know, I'm a part of Bold Force, which is our Black employees organization. And then we have a women's group, we have Asian group, we have a Gen Z group, I'm not Gen Z group, but a Gen X group. We have so many different, we have a vet group. But from a diversity standpoint, it comes from the top down. And you may have seen, you know, our CEO has been out on, you know, on numerous podcasts, numerous business shows, talking about his commitment and our commitment to diversity. So it's really big, to the point of last year, we celebrated Juneteenth as a company. You know, we were like, whoa, that's awesome. This month, you know, we're wrapping up Black History Month. We had a whole program, you know, it's amazing. We have about 50,000 employees. We had programs set aside for education. We had a book club reading Stacey Adams' book. We had trap yoga one afternoon. I mean, we have a lot going on. So it's not checking the box. We are living it. We recruit allies. We were just on a call. We had Black Family Feud a couple of days ago, and we had about 3,000 people on playing Family Feud, and not everybody was Black. Yes. And so it was great that, you know, we had that going on. So we do live diversity. We also this year just changed. We're no longer observing President's Day as a holiday. We switched it to MLK Day. So MLK Day is now our official. So we're doing a little bit more than checking the box.
Yeah. I totally feel that a lot of companies could look at Salesforce as a platform for how their diversity should look. I've had many conversations with Gay on the side, and it really feels like her company as a whole is very welcoming from a diversity standpoint.
And also one other thing that I think is really important is our commitment to equal pay for men and women. So about 4 years ago, our CEO announced that was going to be a corporate mandate that men and women are paid the same. And so far, we spent about $12 million right-sizing salaries. I actually, about 2 years ago, was a beneficiary of a salary adjustment, because they're just every 6 months, you know, doing a random audit of, you know, are the men and women, because, you know, at one point you can level the playing field, but then, you know, not everyone may be following the same practice when they're hiring. And so if you come in and you get brought in at a salary lower than your male counterpart, you can trust that Salesforce is going to make it right.
Wow, that's awesome. So, what does it look like now? So, in this field, generally, are you still the only African American woman at the table, or are you seeing more people, especially with this push, that look like you, having these conversations, sitting at the table with you?
That's a good question, Jill.
It is still in my world, like I said, we have 50,000 employees. We still, we have about 20, not even 20%, about 12% African American. And then when you take that down to women, it's less. And then that percentage of engineers is even smaller. So it's still, we still have a long way to go. I was looking at statistics the other day, and women engineers in general, the field is declining. So, you see programs out there for promoting STEM for young girls. That's real. We need to keep doing programs like that to get young ladies interested. But yeah, I'm still the only. And when I see another, it's like, when you're at a PWI and you're walking across campus and you're like, oh, there's another Black person. Like, hey, but anytime you're in an environment like that, so you get excited, and that's how it is here. I can probably count on, one hand in the 9 years I've been here, how many Black female engineers I've run across.
You know what? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I don't think she can hear me. I'm gonna still have microphone.
Go
Can
for
you hear me? So I think what happens is the ivory tower. The ivory tower is considered academia. These people try so hard to stop us from actually getting out into the industry. And it sounds weird, it sounds crazy, but I'm so serious. There are struggles. I know I have a friend who was an engineering major, and she, first of all, has been in school forever, but she said that when it comes down to doing study groups and everything like that, she gets left out from her white counterparts, so she has to go to the males or whatever, but she doesn't always feel comfortable being with the males. But what I've also realized too is when I was in the Army, I can do engineering. Like when I went to A&T, I actually tutored people on circuits, and they were like, why don't you just change your major to engineering, because I can't do math. But but it's the ivory tower. It's like stopping people because they're like, I just can't do this. I'll just change my major to something else. I'm good at math. I know a guy who majored in architectural engineering. He's a math teacher. And I'm like, what happened? He was just like, it was too stressful. And I'm like, but you got the degree now. Right. Just like, but if the degree is just stressful, just imagine how stressful the field is. And I'm like, hey, but we need you, right? But it's just like the ivory tower. It's kind of like, it's almost like getting a doctorate degree. What's the thing called? It's like hazing, right? How bad do you want it? Not that bad. I gotta live after this. So I think that's one thing that's kind of stopping us, though.
Do y'all feel that's something that stops us? I know that last week a lot of people were saying, people told them that they couldn't be in this field, couldn't do technology, couldn't graduate college, or, you're a girl, you shouldn't go into engineering, that's for men. Do you feel like that's something that is still preached or, taught, and maybe that's the hindrance?
I think
maybe we need more mentors, people who look like us in those fields, reaching back into their communities and their, networking to make sure that the young females are getting the support they need to keep pushing them to keep going forward.
Yeah,
because I could see how even in college the classes were hard, but for me, like my sister had went through it, and she, communicating with her through college helps push me through it. But everyone doesn't have like a mentor or anybody that they can talk to, and they go into that field not knowing that the work may be a little harder, and then they just kind of give up.
Yeah, one thing that you guys brought up is that you're from rural North Carolina. I think a good portion, if I remember, I worked with admissions about 2 years ago, and I think a good portion of our students are from rural North Carolina. And let me scoot over. Okay, you brought up a good point about being from rural North Carolina. A good portion of our students are from rural North Carolina, from Rocky Mount, the 252 area, way out 910 area, the little forgotten areas. So I think one thing that people can see in you, like you said, they need mentors and people that look like them, but people that come where they come from, right? So if I know that somebody came from, y'all from Farmers Union, which I've never heard of, They hear like, look, there's somebody who's like me. If they can come to Farmers Union, they did this, then, you know, if I can couple with them or just meet them or have a conversation with them, I can have that drive. You know, I remember when I was in school, I'm not going to talk about what the stuff I got. When I was in school, I found myself going to a doctoral graduation. Not because I knew anybody, but to see Black women across the stage, so that was me getting where I needed to be. You know what I mean? And that was my image that stuck in my head. So to see two girls from Farmers Union, North Carolina, becoming engineers, I do it. And that's why I'm still here at HBCU. I worked in a corporate space. And I make good money in the corporate space. But I want my students, that's why I was intentional about getting a Black woman to be my assistant, because I want you to see that in education, and there's nothing wrong with being a teacher, but you don't have to stop at being a teacher, right? And I think that's the best thing about it is the representation.
Right, right.
Which one is May?
That's May.
May and Gay. So, like Ms. Thorne said, you know, it's the representation. Those STEM things matter. And I wish they would get out of, I hate to say it this way, out of DC, big cities like that, and go into the rural places, because we need help there too.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, okay, that's my soapbox.
I mean, I think it's been said, you know, just getting out there mentoring, getting those people to see that, you know, two Black women and other Black women. I remember being at A&T, and this is still a thing. I had a friend that was a mechanical engineering major, and I would go over there to see her, and she was still like one of the only one in her classes. So even going back to, you know, high schools and things and being like, you know, this is an option. Yes, it's hard, but, you know, it shouldn't just be just one person in those classes and in those programs. So whatever we can do to, you know, push that, I am here for it, because everybody doesn't have to be, you know, a teacher or, you know, nursing or those things that they say that women are supposed to do. And I think them seeing you and seeing this episode is definitely going to help, you know, see that and push that for our students as well.
Okay,
I think, I was going to say, going back to, you know, the whole study group thing and being left out, that was the beauty of going to an HBCU. You didn't get left out. You were part of, you were always a part of, and that was a community that, you know, even though engineering was hard, everybody else there looked like you and talked like you, came from where you came from. So you were all in it together. So you didn't feel you were left out. So that's what made it attainable. So I saw other women, other girls at the time in engineering, but again, it was a handful, but at least they were there. And I felt like, if they're there, then I can do it too.
Yeah. I can't imagine doing engineering anywhere other than HBCU, like where you felt welcomed and you had the help and the resources that you needed. So
yeah, especially May, you talked about the internships, you know, talking about being the only, you know, there was one internship that I had, and I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, where the population of the state is like 0.2% Black. So you're talking about being the only in the whole freaking state. So you had that, but the thing was, you didn't get that same nurturing, even with the internships. There was one instance where I was the only American. So not only just the only Black, I was the only American in the group. So just thriving at an HBCU, you know, that's the best place to be, especially when you're taking on something like engineering.
Sorry.
So that's the push. Go to an HBCU. That's what I heard.
Yes, but also, because, you know, we live here on the East Coast, right? So when I lived in Houston, everybody talked about Prairie View A&M, right? And I was like, what is that? They're like, it's like A&T. I'm like, no. There's nothing like A&T, get it right. But they also produce, the church I went to, plug, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. It's a big Black church there, but there were so many women engineers and so many engineers, and it was just like the feng shui they had about themselves, the pride, like, I can make anything you put in front of me. And it was just like, okay, y'all are super smart. So even then, I think that's some things people ask, like, you know, you say go to HBCUs, what HBCUs offer engineering degrees? Well, there's, I don't know if Alabama State does, but I know that there's Prairie View A&M, and there was North Carolina A&T State University. Now, you may also want to look at some schools that have CIS programs. If somebody is listening and interested or want to change their major.
We're not saying, yeah, our tech person is trying to put up eagles. We're not doing that. Our producer is trying to say eagle. No, we're not. But yeah, them two, all HBCUs.
Just focus on A&T or Prairie View if you want to get a change.
Or Shaw, because that's who employs us, and we have a CIS program as well. But I know we're running out of time, so just a few questions for you, just for those who are watching, and technically our students. We really want our students to hear this. Both of y'all are in a space where you see people coming in to get jobs. Mm-hmm. What are 3 things that you would tell them when, one, applying for these jobs, and 2, when they're researching, just 3 things you feel will help them be successful?
I think one thing that's very important, if it's something that you don't know how to do, tell them you're willing to learn it. I think that's very, very important. I've been on projects where I didn't know how to do something, but I had an interest in it. And if they know you're willing to learn it and you have that drive, then it makes a world of a difference. I'm trying to think what else. Okay, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I would say, following up on that, say yes to everything. I wouldn't have wound up in Salt Lake City, Utah, if I had not said yes. Being in Utah and that experience got me my next internship and the next internship. So yes, opens doors. You might not like what's behind the first door, but it opens up the second door. So always say yes. I would also say, don't limit yourself to only things you can see. We've talked about it here today. Just because you haven't seen someone do what it is you want to do, it doesn't mean it can't be done. It's just you can be the first, and it's okay to be the only. The generation that's coming now, has already witnessed so many firsts. And so that should be proof alone that color of your skin doesn't define your potential.
Right.
And one more thing also, maybe if you don't know how to do something, learn how to do it. There's so many resources online that are free from a programming perspective to just kind of learn how to do some of the basics. Because if you know how to do some of the basic programming languages, you can still put that on your resume, even if you're self-taught. I've done that myself, and it helps open up lots of doors for myself.
So let me ask, y'all see HTML?
There you go. Yeah. HTML. Yep. Put it on there.
Mm-hmm. If you've done some stuff with it.
Yeah. And I would also say, as you're looking for, who you want to work for, we talked a little bit about diversity and inclusion. Look for companies that are making that a priority. Now with thanks to Black Lives Matter and other movements, there are so many companies that are trying to do right. They're trying to do right. And if you can find companies like that, it'll be just like being in an HBCU. You'll have an opportunity to thrive in a company that allows you to be your authentic self and not go in and worry about stepping on anybody's toes or saying the wrong thing.
Our second ever episode. I appreciate it. I really, really appreciate it. We appreciate it. And we
just happy that you're here, that you were here. I don't know if y'all can hear me because I'm using my clip. My whisper, but we really appreciate you being here. We got really good information, and we'll probably be calling on you again because we're probably going to end up doing something when the world opens back up. Maybe bringing people in, maybe doing a personal TED Talk, or maybe a one-on-one questioning. Yes, we're gonna call it questioning with our students. Who aren't looking to go into that. And I know that there'll be a lot of questions because there are women who are looking to do other things. So when we get more swag, we're gonna send some out.
Yes.
So be on the lookout for that. Bolo. We hope you have a wonderful Sunday. And a even greater week.
Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.